All right. Well, we had that Bigfoot episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And shout out to the Y-Files. So we love them. And you guys have seen the Y-Files.
Oh, yes. Love the
I'm
Y-Files.
a huge fan.
I mean, it's a different level of show than ours. It literally looks like you're watching the History Channel or TLC or
Well, he
something.
delivers it in a nice way, too. And, like,
Yeah.
the fish aspect is
Hecklefish.
funny.
I'm actually starting to like the Hecklefish.
I hated him at first, but now he's grown on me.
He's kind of funny.
There's an episode, I can't remember which one it is, but he goes off on this tangent about, I think it's actually about the episode he does on 0 Point Energy.
Okay.
And Hecklefish, like, he starts talking about how, like, the government's hiding it and stuff. Hecklefish goes on, like, this tirade where it's like, bleep, bleep, mother, bleep, stupid mother, bleep. Like, it's, dude,
he did that.
He was on the
Mount
fence.
Hayes on one of them.
Yeah.
Like, mother bleep,
effing
bleep,
Mount
Hayes.
So funny. Anyways, but as time's gone on.
And then, the one I'm actually referencing today is on Neanderthal versus Homo sapien. And so he's talking about the different types of humans. There's Homo erectus, and then Hecklefish like, Homo erectus. He's like, grow up. He's like, yeah, get it? Grow up. He just can't stop. Like, it's pretty funny. But so we're doing that Bigfoot episode. And we got into some stuff like filming, like, you were talking about like they're in different dimensions and all this.
Oh, yeah.
But like, maybe it's like both more of a boring answer, but also kind of cool. Is that we're Homo sapiens. We come from Africa, essentially. If this model is correct, right? And the reason we're in Africa is because Neanderthal, who typically, I mean, how do you guys describe Neanderthal when you think of it?
Just like dummies.
Like dinosaur brain.
Yeah, I always
walking
think of
around with a stick.
Encino Man. He's like wheezing the juice or whatever. But in actuality, I mean, and in actuality, I shouldn't say that. According to some people, Neanderthal was actually more advanced.
Oh.
Like, as smart as we were, tool maker, but also bigger, faster, stronger, had better eyesight, and loved to eat. About 95% of its diet was meat.
Okay.
And its favorite meat? Us. Homo sapiens. So they were the things that like went bump in the night, and a lot of there's maybe some genetic memory, like the reason we don't like to go outside at night.
Yeah.
And there's good evidence that they had dark skin and hair like on their bodies. So they were just like tanks.
Hey, I pick up where you're going.
Yeah, they didn't need a lot of this this lap of luxury that we have to stay alive, or these caves that the Homo sapiens would be living in to hide from Neanderthal. Yeah. But also we were like hairless, and our bodies are designed to like lose heat. Neanderthal apparently, the science of this is maybe sketchy. They produce heat, like they could just be in the snow and totally be fine.
Well, that makes things like the whole evolution. We like lost our hair so we could hunt animals to wear them to stay warm. Like, doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So if they're like still making heat, they're like the ultimate predator.
Yeah. So Neanderthals did so good. They were like all the way to Asia, all the way to the north, like European countries, Italy, France, all those places, even crossed the English Channel, and they went and just murdered everybody in Britain, and Neanderthal dominated even the islands of Britain. And then Homo sapien was basically down in Africa. Really tough to live in Africa. And apparently got us down to like 40 or 50 of us left.
Oh, dang.
And they could tell by looking at like the genetic like differences. Like we're one of the least genetically, I think the word is diversified.
Yeah, probably.
Genetically diverse animals on the planet. Human beings are. Probably this guy's book was because Neanderthal loved to eat us.
Like ate us down to like 6 families.
Yeah.
It's like a whole new meaning to the caveman diet.
But then,
it wasn't the caveman's diet, it was the caveman diet.
Yeah, that's right.
Caveman diet.
Yeah.
Zing!
It was high protein.
So it was high protein.
Yeah, high protein. They
And
were
then
into
they're
ice.
just
Look, Neanderthal again, the Titanic episode, they're into ice bath.
There you go.
So they got all that Zen going on. Yeah,
dude, the Donner Party is probably the closest one to the caveman diet.
Yeah, there you go.
Since...
Dang, too soon.
And so,
what was it, like 150 years?
Yeah.
Come on.
So then the Homo sapiens up in the cave, they just got to rewrite history.
And then
they're like, screw those guys.
And then
we actually hunted them and killed them.
Then we make Encino Man.
Yeah.
And they're like, look how dumb these cavemen are, these Neanderthals.
And now Geico has the caveman.
But really, it isn't even actually accurate, really, because Neanderthal didn't really necessarily go to caves, which is why Homo sapien ended up winning. A volcano went off. It blocked out the sun for several years. All of these huge animals. The Neanderthal would hunt these animals. 700-pound cave lions, hunted them to extinction with sticks and spears.
Jeez.
I mean, that's so hardcore.
Homo sapien wasn't doing that. We were eating fruits and vegetables that we could find.
Yeah, a bunch of sissies.
Yeah. Picking seeds out of like elephant dung.
Our number one trait for survival was retreating. Yeah. Retreat. And so we got good at it. But anyway, I was thinking watching this.
Okay.
And then as I was thinking it, I have to give credit. He also said it in his video, so I don't want to pretend like I'm inventing this idea. But maybe just Neanderthal still exists, and that's what Bigfoot is. Because he was 6 to 10 feet tall, about 5 to 6 times as strong as a human being, covered in hair. Maybe some of the more reclusive Neanderthals that survived, they are like, I'm not going to go into that village and hang out with those Homo sapiens. They're dumb.
I'm just going to go higher up the mountain.
I'm just heading to the Pacific Northwest. And
in the trees.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of holes in the earth.
And I did...
Honeycomb earth.
I will say I did see finally a pretty believable video of recent years. Did you guys see the one? It was like a short that went out. And that they're like...
like probably 20 feet and stuff.
And you're first you're like, that could just be a dude in a suit. And then it like picks up like a 30-foot long tree.
Have you not seen that one?
I don't think so.
Starts banging it on the ground and stuff, and you're like, what? Yeah, so
it's like probably a tree trunk like this big, and then it's like
30 feet long, probably.
Yeah, it's like huge, like a whole tree, and he's like,
dang,
bam, bam, and you're like, oh my gosh,
you're like, that's a good fake.
Yeah.
Or
I can't even see the strings.
Yeah.
Or
it's real.
It's Neanderthal.
Yeah. So I just thought that was interesting because I'm like, we were talking about Bigfoot. This would have been cool to have for that episode, but I mean, it kind of makes sense. Wasn't out there yet. Yeah, it kind of makes sense. We know Neanderthals existed. My sister-in-law is 5% Neanderthal.
That's wild.
Can she pick up trees?
She is. I will say it's the joke. She is super strong. She's not super aggressive, no, but
she's strong.
She is very strong relative to most women.
Truth to that, then.
Yeah, maybe, dude.
Yeah.
Speaking of Y-Files, it's funny that you brought it up because if you weren't going to bring it up, I was going to bring it up. So the other day I was watching it while I was working, and Noah, my youngest, he comes in, and he's probably gonna be embarrassed that I actually shared this. So. Sorry, bud. But we were watching the episode that he did on shadow people.
Okay.
And in my mind, I'm already knowing, like, this is probably not the right episode for him to be down here and watching.
Yeah.
But he's watching it. He's, like, with my wife, my second oldest, Ethan. And they're all sitting on the couch while I'm working. And we're all watching Y-Files. And he talks about the man in the hat for shadow people. And it's like 8, 9, 10 hours later, because it was like in the morning, so it's like later in the evening.
Yeah.
Noah brings this to me.
Oh no way.
That's creepy, bro.
Yeah, he goes, we'll put it nice and close. He goes, Dad, it's the man in the hat. And I'm like...
He was standing in my backyard.
I'm like, oh yeah? And he's like, yeah. I've never seen him, though. I was like, okay, good.
You're like, okay.
Man, I was like... I'm like looking for the holy water. I'm like, I'll do some exorcism on the man in the hat.
Well, that could be worrisome. You ever hear about those teen? We and my wife used to listen to all those like murder shows, the podcasts like about crimes and whatnot. And those teenage girls got into. You've probably heard of it, Philly. The guys,
Slenderman.
Slenderman.
Yeah.
And these get into Slenderman, so they invite their friend over.
Yeah.
And say, let's go out in the field. And they just go out in the field and stabbed her like 38 times.
Slender Man told her to.
Slender Man told her to.
Yeah.
Wait, I remember seeing
I was like,
Yeah, I saw that on like 2020.
yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
There's like a ton more things like
So
that.
now you're saying my
hers
kid's
was
gonna
like the
turn
most
into a serial
famous.
killer?
I'm just saying, keep an eye on it.
The jury's still out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've developed several ciphers.
Was murdered in Dallas, Texas. He was shot by a sniper hiding in a building near his.
A bizarre flash occurs, and the plane has vanished. Upon
WEF is an organization.
Fly away, Houston. Vector good. Bye-bye, fly.
Well, we're back again. Travis, Fielding, you know me, I'm Daniel. And yeah, let's get this started.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so we talked about doing this episode the last week, and we're going to talk about Ezra's eagle, which we're going to jump into, I think, a little bit more of like the roots of kind of where Ezra eagle comes from, and what it comes from is an actual a book that's in the Apocrypha.
Okay.
It wasn't originally in the original Apocrypha, I guess you could say, but for those that don't know what the Apocrypha was. So the Apocrypha, so there's a lot of books, you know, including the Bible and all the books that are in the Bible that originated, you know, 2, 3, 4,000 years ago, right? And moving forward over generations following bloodlines, you know, and interactions that they had with spiritual beings or, you know, life lessons that they learned, you know, visions from God and all kinds of stuff, right? You have the Old Testament, the New Testament, you know, the life of Christ, all that stuff's in the Bible. The Apocrypha is kind of like the books that didn't make it into the final Bible.
Because I can't remember, it was like one of the Catholic Church officials or Roman Church, something like that. They compiled all the books and they kind of decided what goes in and what doesn't go in, and then that's what we have today as the like King James version, right? So this is some of those scriptures that got
the boot.
Right.
Okay. And what you're talking about is the Reaffirmation and Council of Trent, which essentially what they did is this was during the Protestant Reaffirmation in the 16th century, and reformers like Martin Luther, what they did is they basically said, okay, they gathered all the books up, they took what was in the Bible, they took what was in the Apocrypha, and they said, okay, based on what's canonized, what they felt should be canonized, they then generated like the Orthodox version of the Bible, and then you also had what was the other one? The one that the Christian Church did. But yeah, so essentially, yeah, the different religions have gone through and they've actually pulled certain things out. The Ethiopian Bible has a lot of those original books that are, according to like the Catholic Church or Orthodox Christians, that they're not canonized, so they don't include it.
It'd be interesting to see what's in there, what they believe.
Right. An interesting thing too, because there's a lot of like Western Christian churches that typically use the King James Version or the Orthodox version of the Bible, but there still is like some other like Western religions. I got this book here really quick. So for those that are watching, super dope book if you want to learn about like Ezra's eagle, but a lot of like things that are in the Apocrypha that have to do with like
A remnant shall return.
Yeah, so this book's about like the lost 12 tribes, but it talks about Ezra's eagle and that vision and what it means, and he does a really good job. Michael B. Rush does a really good job on all of his books on kind of more the religious, I guess you could say almost like religious conspiracies, right? Like some of the things that aren't canonized, but he does a really, really good way of describing it. But there is like a quote in here that I thought was pretty cool. This is from the LDS Church. And for those that know the LDS Church, there's a guy named Joseph Smith who was the one that translated the Book of Mormon. But he went in prayer to God and asked him about the Apocrypha. And he received some revelation, and this is what he was told. He said, it says, Verily, verily, thus saith the Lord unto you concerning the Apocrypha. There are many things contained therein that are true, and it mostly translated correctly. Therefore, whoso readeth it, let him understand, for the Spirit manifesteth truth, and whosoever is enlightened by the Spirit shall obtain benefit therefrom. So, even though, like, there's a lot of religions that think of it as, like, not, like, canonized scripture, there's some religions that think that there is quite a bit of, like, truth in it. And kind of the idea is, you know, it's the eye of the beholder, right? Like, as you read it, you have to think and decide for yourself on whether or not you think it's true.
That's the same with every scripture, though.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of cool stories in the Apocrypha. There's a lot of cool books in the Apocrypha that talk about, you know, kind of even like before Noah and his lineage and some of the experiences that he had as a child. And like, there's all kinds of like cool stories and stuff that are in there.
I love it. Fringe religion.
A little bit on the fringe, but I still think it's important. It gives some more context to some of the things that are in the Bible. But yeah, I guess you could say like reader beware. Just
reader beware, man.
Yeah, just read it and decide for yourself. But
I guess you could also say read or beware.
Yeah. Or just like
or
read
it,
it,
lost
but
forever.
like
read or be lost.
Don't
forever.
try and start your own religion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fielding.
That's what I keep doing. I keep reading it, and I'm just like, dude, we're going. And
Yeah.
I go out and I tell my wife, and she's like,
don't do
"It's
it.
good points. You could probably start one, but you probably shouldn't."
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, all right.
Okay.
Nah, you got some solid points. Points. So anyway, so I think it's important to like set the context of what the Apocrypha was and where that originated and kind of how it is used today. I guess you could say a lot of it, as people think of it like fringe religion. You know, not factual. Could be a lot of just like stories that didn't actually take place that were more like, you know, used for analogies and teach lessons and stuff like that, which you could say the same thing about the Bible too. But where the vision of Ezra's eagle comes from, it comes from the book of Esdras, which is the second book of Esdras, or some people refer to it as the fourth book of Ezra. But in the Apocrypha, it's the second book of Esdras. And what the second book of Esdras is an ancient Jewish apocalyptic text that is considered part of the biblical Apocrypha. But essentially, that entire section of the Apocrypha, that book, talks about a future society and kind of what will take place and, you know, what will essentially end up happening in regards to the future and things like that. So
I'm all ears.
Yeah, so we'll jump into this. I definitely will say, just from my own experience, like after going through and like reading this, and most of my knowledge came from Michael B. Rush's book that I talked about earlier on what Ezra's eagle is. And I've got some graphics and some pictures that I'll put up on the video, but I want to show you guys too.
Yeah.
That I think kind of help with the context. I honestly thought about trying to draw it on the whiteboard, but dude, it's too much.
There's a lot.
I'm not an artist.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
If my wife was here, because she did our other video, she's going to do picture. She's going to do another one. But she's recovering from a surgery, so
yeah, we'll cut her some slack.
Big baby. Just kidding. No, it's awful. Anyways, so what do you guys know? Maybe I want to get an idea of like what do you guys know about Ezra's eagle, like the actual vision. Like,
so the vision was Ezra had a vision of what, an eagle that had what, like 12 feathers on its left wing, like 8 feathers on its right wing, and then the feathers were different lengths, and they would kind of came to him one at a time. Like he'd be like, this one would rule this, It was
Right.
kind of like revealed to him what I meant. And then one of them was, it ruled twice as long as any other feather.
Right.
And it actually said kings, I think, which, so then there's some people that think it's like the Roman leaders, which technically they weren't kings either, but they were emperors.
Yeah.
Right.
But, and then there was 3 heads, and, which is interesting because there's some, like Russia and the Siberians, and they would have 3, they would be represented by 3-headed eagles for a long time. And I think this prophecy, actually, they changed it because of it or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but apparently you overlay this with American presidents, starting with, like, Hoover.
Hoover, yeah.
Yeah, and then you overlay and you're like, all right, well, there's Hoover, and then FDR was the one that was twice as long as anyone else because he had 4 terms.
Yeah.
And then it even
FDR.
said that something about his feather was like they did 4 terms, but then the voice of the people said you can't do that again.
Right.
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 And so that was like the interpretation was like, yeah, he'll rule that long, but the people won't allow it. Or was it the voice of the people? Or
Yeah. Essentially, yeah. The voice of the people basically spoke, and basically were against him serving longer.
But then it gets really weird because then you're rolling along, and each feather is basically a president, and then there's one that's a short feather, and the first short feather was one that was, so, and the verbiage does matter, I think. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like, this person will rule less than they were intended to rule, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first short one was, who do you think, Philly?
Well, if we're
set it
talking
up.
presidents,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go with Kennedy.
And so that was the first short one, was Kennedy.
Top blown off.
And then it gets a little murkier after that. Nixon was one who also would have to be a short feather if it was American presidents, but there's a little bit fuzziness here because he technically served a full term.
He was just like...
Got removed in his second term. But that's where the verbiage matters, I think, because it's like, well, are they going less than a term? It doesn't really say that. It says less than they were intended to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it even gets murkier because then a short feather, the most recent short feather would have been Donald Trump. And the only way that would be true to the prophecy is if there was some sort of stealing of the election.
Miscounting of
Yeah.
numbers.
To where it was stolen from him or something, because again, it's about really less than intended.
Right. And I've heard it both ways. Either A, the election was stolen from Trump, so therefore he became a short feather because, he should have served another term.
Too, yeah.
But I also heard that that impeachment.
Oh.
I mean, Trump was impeached technically twice before he finished his term.
Isn't
And
that
so-
what happened to Nixon? Did Nixon get impeached? And then
He got
eventually
impeached,
he
true,
stepped
too.
down,
Yeah.
but you didn't have to step down. You could you could finish your term.
Yeah,
You just don't
yeah,
have
because
any
you have to be
power.
impeached in both places in order for you to be both the House and the Senate for you to actually be impeached.
Taken and removed.
And Trump wasn't, but forever he will be known as the president that was impeached.
But then also, though, the next feather is a short feather, which would have to be Biden if that was
Correct.
true, right?
Correct.
And the only way that is true then, well, I guess this isn't the only way, but I guess one of the ways it's true is he doesn't make it to the inauguration of the next president.
Biden.
Or himself.
Yeah.
If he were to be reelected, if he just doesn't make it till then, which I could see, the most likely scenario to me would be something like that, where maybe he gets reelected, but then they're like, after they secure the reelection, then they're like, all right,
You've lost your marbles.
we did it. Good job, team.
Yeah.
This is literally the greatest campaigning team in the history of the earth.
Yeah.
And Biden, you are now.
Yeah, you go back down the basement.
And he's like, I'm going to drive my Corvette. And they're like, you don't have a Corvette anymore, my
Yeah.
friend. You are.
He's like, yeah, I do. It's by all those boxes that
Yeah.
They're supposed to be locked up in top secret.
But I can see that being totally played out because I actually still see. I mean, Donald Trump's dominating and all these things, and you hear all this stuff. But I mean, we've already seen anything can happen.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not as optimistic as like Fielding with the white hat, black hat thing.
Yeah.
Like I think it would be a miracle if Donald Trump wins, and then even if he wins, that it is good for the world. I mean, it's like.
Well, that's scary because like he has so much. Like every time he gets like impeached or he has another like court thing thrown at him, his popularity rises. So like he obviously has like fringe fans.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so
probably
will
connect the dots people might be Donald Trump fans? I don't know.
Probably.
So
I mean,
we're all pro Biden.
Well,
but
to not go too far down the road yet.
Go sharp address.
Yeah. Let me break it down really quick. What the actual
okay,
vision
so that was basically everything that I knew.
Yeah. Which I mean, you got like all the main points, which we're gonna dive in deep to a lot of this, and I'll go through all the different presents, and there's some graphics I'm gonna pop up on the screen so people can see. But so essentially, Ezra has this vision, okay, where he's basically shown an eagle, okay, and the eagle has 12 wings, or 12 wings, symbolizing the 12 emperors of Rome, is what he originally thinks. And when he says wings, he's talking about the feathers. Okay.
But we think today it's like the 12, like judicial something or other, right? Maybe I'm thinking of something different.
No, you're thinking of the heads, I think, the three.
Yeah, it has three heads representing
possibly.
three successive rulers or dynasties of the Roman Empire, which is what, and it says the Roman Empire because at the time when it was read before and people thought about it and interpreted it, originally it was like, well, the Roman Empire was the biggest empire there was at that time, so everyone was trying to pigeonhole the Roman Empire into this vision.
Okay.
And we're going to obviously talk about the case that a lot of people have made that it's more about the United States than it is about Rome.
Well, isn't the one thing is weird on? Are you going into Rome right now?
We can talk about Rome, yeah.
Well, it was the second feather that was the long one, right? Mm-hmm. And so that wouldn't make sense in Rome because the longest ruler was the first one.
Right.
So.
And so does
it's like kind of disqualifies it right out of the gate. But I couldn't find anyone who kind of, because we can all justify everything pretty good. So I was looking for somebody who's like totally into the Rome thing to kind of like, yeah, but if you look at the laws in Rome at the time, there was, this guy and he was a janitor, but the janitor had a lot of power. Yeah, and so but I couldn't find that. And so it's like literally the longest ruler was I forget his name.
FDR.
No, in Rome it was shoot, I'm totally forgetting it now, but
yeah, I don't have that because most everything I have is gonna make the case it's about the United States. But while you're looking that up, let me kind of keep breaking this down here really quick. Hold on, sorry.
Augustus.
Yeah.
So Augustus was the first.
Yeah, Caesar Augustus. Yeah.
It's also interesting too, like while you're scrolling, the Augustus was the one the reason they were called emperors and stuff. He wouldn't take a monarch. Like it was like he specifically didn't want to be a monarch, which I don't know why, but
yeah.
But then that also could be argued with the presidents of the United States. They're not kings either.
Yeah.
So I would say that doesn't matter as much, but
right. So anyway, Ezra ends up getting this vision, and he's led by an angel named Uriel, who explains the meaning of the vision to Ezra. So the 12 wings, which are the feathers, signify the 12 emperors who rule over this empire. And then the 3 heads represent 3 rulers or dynasties that will follow one another. Okay? And then the vision goes on, and we'll jump into a lot of this. Is very baseline. Then there's the decline of the eagle. Okay? So then it talks about an eagle representing this civilization, this empire or country. And the interpretation suggests that the eagle will rule with great authority and dominance, which, I mean, Rome did that. right? They went all over Europe, and they went down in the Middle East, out northern Africa, and took a lot of land and created a pretty large empire, right? But then you also have the United States, which ever since
also
it's
does a good job.
I would say this too. Like, it's kind of like, you're watching like a Formula One race, right? But you're watching a Formula One race from like the 50s. It's like they're pretty fast cars.
Yeah.
They're going over 100 miles an hour.
Right.
And their pit stops are like an hour.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now you watch Formula One, and they're literally going over 200, like on average, know, and on these straightaways and whatnot. And then their pit stops, I think Red Bull broke the world record for a pit stop. And I'm you have to double check me, Dan, when you do this, but you could literally put the whole video as a
sure
clip.
it's like
3 seconds.
Yeah, it's like,
and that's like
3 seconds.
tires,
it's like
fuel.
2 seconds something.
Change the lug to one for
yeah,
bolt
like
for
in
the
the
tire.
video, it's like he just rolls up. It's like
I did he even stop? I don't know.
Yeah,
but I kind of like,
sick.
to me, it's almost like that. It's like Rome dominated. Yeah, did they? I mean, they went to Britain and they went to kind of Asia Minor, but to deploy an army, they would have to. It'd take months, maybe years to get there.
Right.
America is like literally, for better or worse, ready to kick tail everywhere within hours.
Yeah.
And then you look, that's the military, and then you go economics. Okay, they are like, and we're talking about some of this here. It's like they control banking. They control. Yeah. I mean, we. I don't know who it is. It's weird. It's a weird identity crisis. But America is, just to compare Rome and America. America's absolutely dominating.
Yeah.
No one's ever been more powerful.
Unlike anything that.
I watched some video where it's like this guy in like Australia, and he's watching a video with his like kids, and he's showing his kids like the arsenal that the United States has, and they're going over like our laser guided weapons that like if somebody shoots a missile at us from anywhere, like we'll knock it down instantly, like without any effort. And then it talks about like all the different like tanks and airplanes and like
my favorite
just
is like
all this great, and the kids are like, oh my gosh, that's great, like, and the trillions and trillions we spend on it,
the trillions we stole from all these other countries to build these weapons,
to keep our foot on their neck.
It's awful. I'm only laughing because I don't want to cry. And then some dude's talking about like, yeah, but China, and then the guy's like, oh, whoa, China, they have 2 aircraft carriers. One of them used to be like it was a restaurant or something.
Oh, no way.
It was like this floating casino. It was like a floating casino or something, and they converted
hilarious.
it. And he says the other one was a copy of that one. So, and meanwhile, America, I mean, we have like as far as the aircraft carriers, which apparently aircraft carriers, I didn't realize how truly amazing they are. I mean, they obviously are big, and you think about that, but they're like. I mean, if you were ranking like the military might of like all the countries, like aircraft carriers like are making like the top 20, like each carrier, and then we have like so many carrier groups. It's like, like if it's like Australia, it's like we send 2 aircraft carriers, and it's like we could just fight with them.
Take it, yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying we'd necessarily win, but it wouldn't be. It would be a tough battle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't realize that's the level of power they have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
is crazy.
Keep so much of that stuff quiet anyway until like 50 years later.
Which, note for later, I'd like to talk about why we're so scared of China going to Taiwan, because a lot of the people I looked at, they're like, there is no way. Like, if we don't want them to have Taiwan, they won't have Taiwan.
Right.
And I'm like, that's interesting.
That's something to do with those like chips.
Yeah.
Silicone
chips and I think
that they make their processor.
We'll get to all that, like kind of the current state of things and kind of why this aligns well for the United States.
Yeah.
But anyways, the decline of the feather, it's basically this country's going to have, great authority and dominance over the world. And then there's going to be, its power will wane over time.
And the eagle's power will wane.
Correct. Like the dominant country,
and if we're thinking the eagle represents a country, and we're thinking it's the United States.
Correct. And the eagle's heads, the 3 heads, represent different time periods, right? Which, I mean, if you aligned it with the United States, like the first eagle would be like 13 colonies, the beginning of the country, and settling the West and that kind of time frame. And then the next is like its industrial
The Tom
power,
Brady era.
right? Like dominance.
I was like,
I'm like, wait a minute.
wait.
Oh, I get it now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, what?
Yeah.
But then you have the other eagle head, the second one, which kind of represents the United States industrial power, its rise to dominance, and this like great time period, right? Where you think about like, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, where you have all this growth. And then this last one is where its power starts to wane.
So that'd be like the tech,
Yeah, kind of like the tech area where you have Facebook and Instagram and all these social media platforms come out, political sides, Republican, Democrat, main two parties, end up becoming even more and more polarized because now everyone's information is in each other's face and, everything's very opinionated. And so, even like the founder of like the guy that monetized, and I'll put his picture up, I can't remember his name, but the guy that came up with the monetization strategy for Facebook on like, hey, you've got this platform, but now how do I make it make
Right,
money? And
right.
it was through ad revenue and advertising and all that stuff, and then using the algorithm to what are they looking at on their phone, and then giving them
Right.
specific things. And even him, and there's this awesome documentary on Netflix that's called The Social Dilemma, and he talks about how the thing is about how social media is like tearing everybody apart. But anyways, he goes on and basically says that the only way he sees things ending with the polarization of the United States is in civil war. And he's the guy that like
I freaking hope not.
typed it up. But anyways, so the last head's going to be weaker than the two previous. Okay. And then his vision.
And help me out. And maybe we were going to answer this, but do we know what the heads are?
Yeah. So the three
they were
heads.
asleep, because they were asleep, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are three successive rulers or dynasties of this country, is the way that it's described. And so that's kind of the hard thing with the whole Ezra's Eagles. There's a lot left open to interpretation.
Well, that makes sense. Like 13 colonies. Then you have the Industrial Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have like this massive like tech communication hub.
Yeah.
Where that has deteriorated like society, to sound like an old person.
Right.
But I think a lot of that comes from like our own opinions are just getting mirrored back at us.
Yeah.
So then you're not like hearing another side. And then, everybody's so divided over everything.
Going back to like the beginning of the vision. So Ezra, when he sees the eagle for the first time, it's this large flying eagle, and it has three sleeping heads. Okay? And he says the middle one is the greatest of the three. It represents a kingdom that is greater than all other kingdoms. Okay? And then it says that there's 12 feathers. And then it goes into like...
So would America maybe be just the middle head?
It could be.
Okay.
Because I've heard it both ways. Because it could be that this is like...
Like Britain.
Yeah, like it could be
First.
the like Roman or Britain first. America is the greatest. And then this waning power, New World Order. Governments become...
Illuminati.
Yeah. Like the
Bilderberg.
Yeah. And so I've heard it interpreted both ways. But it also could be different time periods within the United States growth. And and you think about like all the men and women that fought in World War II and how they were always talked about how like they're the greatest generation that this country will ever see because of the things that they had to deal with and the things that they accomplished. And so that time frame of, from World War II to, whatever time frame, I guess, works for people. If you go through like 70s, 80s, before all the technology and all that kind of stuff comes out.
Industrial strength of America, like that life was good.
Yeah, life was good. Homes were
2 cars in every garage.
Yeah. And everybody had a
on
home.
The stove or whatever that saying is.
Chicken in every pot. What, in a car in every garage? Or?
A car. Maybe that's what it is.
Garage or something like that.
Chicken in every pot, car in every garage.
Yeah.
Boiled chicken, man. That's the American dream.
Yeah.
Just boil that up.
Yeah.
The whole chicken.
Yeah.
Sounds awful.
Yeah. And so then it talks about how the heads of the eagles...
the American dream.
Yeah. Apple pie. Baseball. Bubblegum. Anyways, but then the eagles go on to like oppress the world. They wake up in Ezra's vision after he kind of describes the feathers and what they mean, which I'm going to jump into here in a second. But then it says that, this is kind of like a crazy part. It says the second one tries to rule, right, the second eagle, but it's cut even shorter than the last. Okay? So if you tie this
Are you saying feather or...
this is talking about the eagle heads.
The eagle heads. And so
Say
the second head tries to rise up and rule, but
It's cut
has a
short.
shorter rule than the first eagle head?
Correct. And if you align that with like the United States, 1776, all the way to, 1900s,
Sure.
or like, early 1900s, and then it rises to its greatest power, and then it's cut short. And so the one in the beginning rules the longest, right? Which is like 100 and something years.
So if that's true, then we're basically, we are witnessing.
Yeah,
Because that could be like where we were, and if this like cabal has really stolen control, and it has like a shadow
Maybe
government.
the third head is the cabal,
Right, and so they cut this great, like where we were going, and they've siphoned off
we want control of
resources
America,
and wealth.
and they get control of America, but now it's because of them, it's weakened.
Right.
Right. So get this.
That fits with. That fits in this head.
In the
I know. There's some things that like, there's a lot of different interpretations, but I don't know. The one I'm going to try to stick to is the one that like makes the most sense to me.
Okay.
But let's talk about the feathers really quick, because this I feel is like, for me, was the most confusing part of Ezra's vision.
All right, let's
where
just
are all
let you
these
roll through
feathers?
it.
What does it mean? So I'll put the graphic up, but let's go through it. So the first feather is President Hoover. Okay. The second feather, which is the longest feather of all, is FDR, Roosevelt. Okay.
Hoover Dam, where they got the Transformers, and then Roosevelt.
Ark of the Covenant.
Okay.
Yep. All makes sense. And then you had Truman and Eisenhower, which were just normal terms. Okay. Normal size feathers. Then you had the first short feather, which was Kennedy.
Right after Eisenhower warns about the military-industrial complex,
Yep.
Kennedy gets freaking capped.
And he quotes that he would take the CIA and the FBI and like blow them to like 1 billion pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like a couple weeks later, they're just like,
Yeah. Toast. And then you had Johnson, normal feather. Then Nixon.
Normal. Yeah.
Nixon was a short feather, right? Impeached.
Which is interesting. Yeah. He was
Okay.
impeached, and then he did resign in his term, so he didn't finish his second term.
Correct.
because it's shorter than they were
Intended.
shorter than
yeah.
they were intended.
Then you had basically a bunch of feathers that all normal size. Ford, Carter, Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Clinton, George W. Bush, and Obama. Okay.
And those are all just normal feathers. And how many in a row was that?
So there's 14 feathers that are on the left wing.
And how many in a row was it that were normal size then?
So you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And it fit perfect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It fits perfect. Okay. So then
Interessante.
you end up getting over to the right wing, right? And the right wing is a smaller wing with less feathers.
So when I look at it, though, it's my left because it's facing me.
Yeah. And if you want, you can look at the graphic. That might help with some of the context. But so then you have these two short feathers, the first two short feathers, the first one being President Trump, which, like we talked about earlier, could be that his election was stolen. We're not saying it was. Don't take this video off of YouTube. Chill out. We're just talking about it. Gosh. But it could also mean that he was impeached, because he was. He was impeached twice by the House. Then the second feather after Trump is also a short feather, which current president's Biden, right?
He's got about, what, 9 months left?
No, it'd be about a year.
It'd be about a year, yeah. Because
It would go
the
clear-
transition happens in January.
We vote this year.
Today would be inauguration day.
Yeah.
And it's actually a year from today.
Planned it that way.
Also my son's birthday.
Connect the dots.
Happy birthday, Travis's son.
Cash Labor. Shout out to him. He won't hear it.
Shout out Cash.
He's not going to listen.
He'll hear it in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. But as far as presidents and aligning it that way, that seems to fit well. And especially when you're talking about the dominance and all that kind of stuff. Now, then it goes into like the Whore of Babylon, which a lot of people say is the deep state, or these, if you don't like the term deep state, basically these entrenched political powers that we don't vote for, that have too much power and authority within the country, that use that power and authority to dictate politics.
It is weird that some people will shy away from deep state because it's been branded as like, but everyone agrees that there's just this bureaucracy that if you know people and you can do this and you can get, and I kind of go back and forth, like it's like really an organized thing. They wear hoods and do eyes wide shut stuff, or maybe it's just a bunch of people that the richest place in America is Washington, D.C., average income.
Yeah.
It's like they just are protecting, they're just like, well, I can get more money, I can get ahead.
You know what?
And really, what's the difference, really?
Right.
You know what reminds me of like Washington, D.C. is the, oh my gosh, and now as soon as I'd start talking about it, I can't remember the name of the movie, but it's the one where they're like they do like three fingers like.
Oh, yes, dude.
You know what I'm talking about?
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games, thank you. So,
yes.
Watching the Hunger Games, the entire time I watched it, and this is obviously many years ago, but the first time I watched it, I was like, dude, this is like the government and like Washington, D.C. versus the rest of the country, right? Because it's all these people that are trying to live and like get through their everyday lives, and they're living in poverty, and they're just trying to scrape by. And then they end up getting chosen. They get sent to, the Capitol, and they get to the Capitol, and it's like, riches and fame, and, it's about a narrative and a story, and it's all just fake and embellishment. And I'm like, dude, that's
pretty thinly veiled by, I guess it's technically an allegory, but
good job, writer of the.
It's kind of like they just changed all the names and just described Washington.
Yeah. They probably had a
current
vision
state of the country.
Yeah. They're like, instead of calling it the Midwest, I'm going to call it District 10.
Right.
And then that's it.
Yeah.
The end of the book.
The whole show just. So the vision goes on, right? Talks about these two short feathers, how they're cut short. And then it talks about a third and a fourth feather that end up falling off of the eagle's wings.
This is the part that I got a little confused on, and I want us and also anyone listening, this is the future.
Yeah, so now
we're getting into some.
So the second feather, we don't know exactly how that's going to be cut short. We know
if Biden makes it to January 20th, though, that this whole episode will be removed from our YouTube channel because it will be obsolete.
False.
Yeah, and it'll be false, and then we're gonna have to revisit it.
Yeah, we'll have to revisit it.
And they're like, no, this is the new world order now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Every episode's an Ezra Eagle one. It's like,
no.
It was how Boy Scouts ceased to exist. It's like, no. It's the reason we don't have newspapers anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, anyway.
So the third and fourth feather fall off the eagle's wing. He sees this in the vision.
And the other ones don't fall off, right?
Correct. Well, we'll get there.
Okay.
So the third and fourth feather falls off, and what those represent are candidates that end up getting eliminated.
Do you mean
they never serve a term.
Eliminated?
I mean deleted.
Are they
Bro,
elected?
Are we thinking that they're gonna get elected and then killed?
Potentially. And this is where
Trump might be on this thing twice.
There's that book from like the 1800s or something called The Last President, and they have all these like similarities with Trump, that like Trump's the last president. So like if Biden stole the election, then Trump is still like the president, and he's in his second term, which Trump has actually said that we're kind of in his second term, but he doesn't want to take credit for it. And then that would mean
this would be his third term.
Well, this next one. So that's where he said, like in a speech or a rally a couple months ago, he was like, we're kind of technically in my second term. He's like, but I don't want to take credit for it. And then if that's true, if he is like he's the president, he travels with Air Force One supposedly and all this stuff, then these Eagles, there isn't going to be a next president. Like, this is it. Trump's the final president.
There's a lot of. I'm gonna roll through this quickly.
Okay.
And then
I won't distract you.
No. You guys let me know what you.
I'll also try not to distract you.
That's okay. So based on Ezra's vision, right, you have these 2 feathers that fall off, and then the vision goes on for quite some time, and it talks about kind of the undoing that will potentially take place with this eagle, and it's all obviously analogy, but this is where a lot of research and people have taken what's said, and they're now, if these feathers represent presence of the United States from Hoover all the way to Biden, then these are some of the things that are believed to take place this year in 2024. Okay? In order for the second short feather to be drawn short, and then the next 2 feathers to fall from the wing. Okay? So first things first, peace is taken, right? Which is a sign of the second horseman. Okay? That peace, there's no peace on the earth. Right? You look at the state of things right now, you have potential conflict, Chinese and Taiwan. Right? China wants to go in and take Taiwan. You've got the war between Ukraine and Russia. You've got Israel against the Middle East. And then you've got Pakistan and there's like skirmishes between Pakistan and India just recently. And then the United States obviously getting drawn into a lot of these different things.
I was going to say, so something
funding
pops
the war
off here that then...
Yeah. And you've got the war funding, that's going on in Ukraine, and then also help that's happening in Israel. But then also you have our border that's being, just overrun. Who knows who's coming in, right? So definitely not a peaceful time in the world, okay? So according to what would have to take place for it to be a short term for Biden is Biden and Harris end up getting eliminated somehow. Whether that be through impeachment, whether that be, corruption or assassination or something.
Well,
who knows?
Would Harris have to be eliminated?
I don't think she would necessarily, if we're talking about his presence, but if you're talking about his cabinet, some people have said that then Harris would take over his presidency. But then I'm like, that wouldn't be applicable with the others. Right.
Because that would have been like Kennedy served out his term when he was assassinated, because then
Yeah, because Johnson.
So that wouldn't work.
Oh, shoot. Yeah.
Per se.
Well, and it really seems likely that Biden won't make it, even if Ezra's Eagle didn't exist. I mean...
Yeah.
Yeah, his health is deteriorating. He can barely function. At this point, he's just a Manchurian candidate.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of walking the halls of the White House in his underwear, eating his favorite ice cream, and every once in a while he has to take a speech, and they just put his Pampers on and put him out there and say, hey, just don't poop your pants.
I want some of the alpha brain or whatever he has that they give him every once in a while.
Joe Rogan's alpha brain?
When he gets loose.
They're like, here, you gotta make a speech. He's like, whoa.
Have you seen that movie? I think it's called Flight with Denzel Washington. He it starts and it's bumpy terrain, so no alcohol is served, and he has 2 bottles because he's an alcoholic. But then he gets struck by lightning or something, and he does this amazing it's really thrilling to watch. Saves the aircraft, but then as they're investigating the FAA, they come and realize here's these bottles, but one of the girls flight attendants died, and so through investigating it, his lawyers realize he's just a drug addict and a drunk. And so they're like, well, we can blame it on this girl that I think he was sleeping with or something like that. And so they're like, we'll just blame her that she was the one who did it, and then you'll be fine. But the night before he goes to the stand, he gets into the hotel room next door, and because they take all the alcohol out of the room so he doesn't wreck himself, and he gets super drunk, and it's 10 minutes before he has to go down and testify. And so they just buy him cocaine and all kinds of stuff. They get him loaded up, and then he comes down perfect and does all the right stuff. So that's what I always think of when it's Biden comes out and he's mumbling nonsense, and then he goes out and gives a speech for a second. I'm always dude, they just blasted him up with whatever.
That's what I'm gonna do when I'm 80.
That's why
care. You might get addicted to this?
Yeah.
Bro, I'm
about to punch my clock.
Yeah. I have minutes left.
They're this was found in the White House
I'm gonna be
locker room wing, and there's just that's just
it's gotta be Hunter.
Keeps him going.
Yeah.
It's Hunter
that's normal. Yeah, it really wasn't Hunter.
Yeah.
It was Biden.
Yeah, poor Hunter.
Yeah, I think
I wasn't even
there that day.
I think you turn 80, you get on a full cycle with tren, anabolic steroids.
I'd want to constantly
Do
have
meth.
like those anxiety rescue pills I
Yeah.
just pop whenever I want.
Yeah.
Feeling stressed, you're like,
Yeah.
There you
You're
go.
just dialed.
I'm
You're like-
good.
Yeah.
you're
Watch
like,
some old
time to go to
westerns.
sleep. You take a pill for that. Time to
Right.
wake up. Take
It's
another
like
one.
those movies where people wake up in panics and they just grab a pill bottle, take it, and then they're instantly fine.
Yeah. Yeah. The heart pills.
Yeah. They're just like,
hold on a second.
I'm
All
fine.
right.
I'm good. I'm good.
We were watching something in that
That's
app,
awesome.
and he like woke up in a panic, and it was the movie The Creator, which is actually pretty cool. It's like a robot, futuristic thing. But he's like having panic, and he wakes up, takes it, and he's like a second later he's fine. And I'm just like, I don't think pills act that fast,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah,
no.
maybe it's the future. Maybe it's just something figured out.
Could
But anyways, so then moving on to this, I like this
Okay.
list
We're
of
getting in the
things
juice
that
here.
that could potentially happen. So third and fourth feathers are said to be potential leaders, candidates. They're eliminated, which if you would take those two candidates as whoever the nominees are for the Republican and Democratic Party, they get eliminated.
Oh, I was going to ask that. Is it like necessarily terms?
They never get to
or
serve.
could it be at the same
They
exact
never even
time?
get to serve.
They never get to serve. Okay, they
So it
should
could even
have
be-
been able to, but they don't.
The state of America is no longer functioning anymore.
Yeah.
So there is nothing
So in
to
this, it would have to be
serve.
that for that to be the case, 2024 election is canceled because now you don't have candidates, right? And then there's some kind of trigger event because after this, there's no
Yeah.
other presidents,
Hey, last
Right?
president.
right? So then you'd have to have some kind of trigger event like either a false flag, nuclear like missile, goes off somewhere and causes like a nuclear war. You have, there's so many different things that could potentially take place.
What a time to be alive.
I've heard one theory that if it ends up being nuclear war, then, you'd have a couple, everyone would stop. It wouldn't be like thermonuclear war where like the whole world ends up getting destroyed and all that kind of stuff. But it would be enough to the point where everyone would be like, okay, we're done. We all need one government. We're all going to be one country. And then that's when like the UN and all that kind of
Perfect
stuff.
example of
Yeah.
the just
And,
make it stop. We give away whatever freedoms.
Yeah,
just
we'll
make
just,
it stop.
we don't want
And
it
then,
to go on.
then we live in Star Trek's future.
yeah.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
that's that time. Yeah, that's the timeline that I am gonna live on. I'm gonna vibrate over to that frequency. Hold on.
Yeah.
All right, now that's what we're on.
So
That was close.
either way, the continuation of government, there has to be some kind of like takeover coup. It could be that Obama, Trump, and Hillary are the three heads, and then he goes into like the seven horns, titans, seven heads, which could be like Russia, China, U.S., etc. But anyways, in order for this to make sense, something's got to take place this year. Like it's something with the election has to happen.
That makes it pretty exciting because it's like, well, we'll know.
Yeah.
If it's,
Yeah, we'll
if
be
it
able to
is- If
fig-
it is America, it seems like
We're going to
it'll
know
lock
by the
in.
end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it goes on and talks about the future, how like war continues on and there's famine and all kinds of stuff, right? So if we're following this same like line of thinking, you're talking like military, U.S. military is involved, they're fighting, there's famine, which, I mean, there's already talk of that, right? With like global warming, there's not going to be enough food to feed all the, almost 9 billion people that live on the planet, right? But then there's mass famine, that's the third horseman comes in, people start dying of starvation, and then you have just outright civil unrest all over the world. The UN peacekeepers, step in. Deep state is blamed. There's mass disclosure that takes place from behind the scenes government, black ops type stuff to, UFOs to who killed JFK. All these things end up coming out. And then that's when everybody's like, holy cow, we can't trust the
Right.
government. We can't trust our United States government to continue to lead. We need UN peacekeepers to come in and kind of set everything straight and make everything work the way that it's supposed to.
Which is just such an example of how the controlling class always plays both sides.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because then they are also the UN peacekeepers.
They are like
that bring
the
us safety.
most narcissistic people ever, right? They create all the problems and then they get to be the heroes that come in and fix it at the very end, and then they get all the credit, which is crazy.
It's a good system for them.
Yeah, I don't know. When I think of this, and I think of like, and Ezra's Eagle's not the only one. When you think of like Revelations, you think about a lot of the signs of the times and things that will take place. I mean, the grand scheme of things is like it's all part of God's plan. You know, if you're living right, if you're doing the things you need to be doing, you're preparing, you're trying to take care of your family, you know, protecting them, but then providing for them food, water, you know, the essentials, you know, shelter over their heads. You're probably going to end up just fine, right? But is there going to be chaos and some pretty crazy, scary things that will take place? Of course. But the way that I envision things going, I think with the past election with so much doubt and, you know, there's a lot of proof and evidence that if that's come out, you know, in some areas, and maybe I should be careful even saying that on YouTube, but accusations, we'll put it that way. There's a lot of accusations of people cheating and a lot of, you know, changing laws and things like that in order to either benefit or hurt the candidate that they didn't like. And, you know, with so much distrust in the voting system, and then you're going to go into another election, which people think is even more important than the previous election. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of people on edge, a lot of people that are going to be nervous and worried. And I don't know, I could see a lot of different scenarios turning out in a way that could mean, you know, revolution or, you know, fights among political parties that turn violent. I could see those kinds of things happening because I feel right now there's so much of the country that's just hanging on by a thread.
Right.
And it's just going to take one more thing for people to kind of finally be like, okay, I'm done. Like,
And
I'm sick of this.
point that we're heading towards next November, like, is that, like, powder keg moment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Which,
of
and then people are going to be
happen.
more cognizant of what's going on. They're going to be watching more closely. And I think those that want to play games are going to continue to play games. I don't think that it's going to deter them because they, you know, when you talk about the rich and wealthy and the, you know, the powers that be that manipulate all this stuff, you know, they're confident enough in their ability to do it that they are overly arrogant in the fact that they can pull this stuff off and no one's going to bat an eye. And so I do think that there's, you know, evil powers at play, and, you know, whether it be Ezra's Eagle or any type of interpretation of, you know, any type of revelation in scripture, or, you know, you've got like Nostradamus and all kinds of stuff out there. I think there's two lines of thinking. Either one, you're going to read Ezra's Eagle and you're going to pigeonhole it into whatever you want it to believe. And that's kind of the dangers of, you know, people that make predictions of the future, because once you know the prediction, then you start finding the signs,
Right. Is it a
even
self-fulfilling
though,
prophecy?
self-fulfilling prophecy, as opposed to it, you know, seeing the signs for what they are and interpreting it correctly. And I think that's the hard part. I think for a lot of people is, how do I know I'm interpreting it right?
Yeah.
And I think that kind of goes back to kind of what I started with is, you know, it's a lot of the things I think that will take place it'll be up to you to make decisions that you think are going to be right for your family, right for yourself, where you align, whether you don't align at all. You know, what you do in those situations could be completely dependent upon you to make those decisions. And so you have to be, I think, prepared mentally, physically, spiritually, temporally, so that when those tough times come, that you're able to make the right decisions most of the time. And I think you'll be fine. But it is scary to think that we could very well be living in the time that the country just unravels right before our eyes.
I'm going to continue to exist on the frequency and the timeline that, like, nothing can stop what's coming. God wins.
Oh, yeah.
White hats are in charge. Like, Space Force is not like physical space, but like cyberspace. And that's what they like monitor, and they have all the data of all the funny business, and like all of that stuff will come forward, and we're not on a bullet train like
That's gonna hit a
headed
brick wall.
towards a brick
Yeah.
wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna exist on the timeline that God wins.
Right. I agree with that. I think it's going to be scary. I think there's going to be things that'll take place in the upcoming years that, as a father, I worry about my kids. Am I going to be capable enough to be able to make sure that they're safe and provided for? So those are things that do go through my mind. But I also know that in most cases, no matter what it is in life, I think sometimes things have to get worse before they get better.
And we don't live in the city, so for our listeners that do, I'm sorry, but that's something like if you lived on like the coast or like in a big city, that would be scary. That'd be a scary place if stuff started popping off.
Without rule of law is my biggest fear.
We're pretty safe here.
I don't know. I guess my final thoughts is kind of like what I said. I think things are going to get tougher for the United States as a country. I think it's going to get tougher for the world. I think we're going to see things that we've never seen before. But one thing that I am a firm believer in is it's hard to get caught up in it, or it's easy to get caught up in all the negativity, right? That there's so much evil and so much, terrible people out there doing awful things to each other. But, I think fear porn is a real thing.
Yeah.
I think it's so easy to get caught up in the fear, the anxiety, the uncertainty, and then you constantly are looking for it what bad happened, what's going to happen next, and you're constantly looking for these negative things. But behind the scenes of everything that's happening that's negative, there's 100 to 1 stories of people doing good things for each other. And I think of all these different conflicts and wars. We look at World War II and, the war in Afghanistan. You have all these harrowing stories of, these, people saving lives and helping people and going against orders to do this for this person. And there's so many cool stories out there. So I think as things get worse, it's going to be easy for us to just woe is us, and this is so terrible, and everything's coming to an end. Why should I even go to work anymore? Or, I should just hang out in my bunker, with my Facebook CEO buddy in Hawaii and just chill down there. But I also think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity to help people, and I think it'll be up to us as neighbors and as a society outside of government to take care of each other. Whether that be your neighbor, your neighborhood, your city, whatever. But there's going to be plenty of opportunity to reach out and do what we have to do to survive.
I love it.
Cool. Well,
stay positive, be safe.
Yeah, stay positive, be safe. Highly recommend Michael B. Rush's book. He's not a sponsor of ours, but Michael, if you want to sponsor us, we'd love that. But check it out. He's actually got quite a few good books about the future and some of the things that will take place, or that he believes will take place. And he bases off a lot of solid facts. So check it out. And then as always, hit us up. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Where else are we? I don't know. I don't know. Here in our studio. Hit us up here. Email us. And then, I forgot to mention this. Dang it. Well, now you're going to have to go back and watch it again. Whoever found the alien, there's an alien in this studio that has been listening in on this conversation the entire time.
Flip.
And if you find that alien, comment on where you found it. And in your comment, give us a topic. Give us a topic of something, whether it be a conspiracy theory, something you saw in the news, doesn't matter. Give us a topic, and we'll talk about it at the beginning of our next episode.
Cool.
And jump into whatever topic you want.
And nobody's safe fielding.
Yeah.
He's actually a human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do come from a planet, though, that, water's bad for me, and that's why I drink soda, but it's a different...
Yeah, and you're impervious to tanning beds.
Yeah, different timeline.
Skin's tougher than ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have skin cancer by now, but to each their own. Yeah. But we'll be back. More episodes to come. I'm getting excited. about some of the topics that we're going to cover. I think there's going to be some fun things, and then, yeah, we're just going to keep coming.
It'd be sweet.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching. We're Connect the Dots.
Vibrating to a different density timeline.
Dude, I hope you disappear on one of our episodes, dude. That'd be the craziest
so
ever.
Sick. I'm just like,
hey, you know what? I
you
could
guys
probably,
are gone. I'm like, oh,
I could
shoot.
probably make you disappear. Here, step out of your chair for a second before I stop your camera.
yeah, hold on.